you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
Yes, my lord. Increase fatality reduction by 50%.
Who's there?
I am the Senate.
What is up, guys? Today for this video we are taking a look at the Senate himself, Emperor Palpatine. So for this video we're going to be talking about his strengths, his weaknesses. I'm going to be going over some of the star cards that I use, and I'm going to be explaining why I think these star cards fit Palpatine a bit more compared to the other ones. And bear in mind, guys, this is just my personal opinion, as you know, this is one of my hero guides, and I just want to help you guys be able to actually master playing Emperor Palpatine, because especially how new players are coming to the game right now, whenever I'm playing heroes versus villains as an example, I always see a player playing Palpatine and I can kind of tell already that they're a new player just based on how they play with Palpatine already. So just to help you guys experience and make sure that you guys are having fun playing Palpatine, because he is very strong. In the right hands, Palpatine is very strong. So I just want to make sure that you guys have fun playing Palpatine and everything. So we're just going to get straight into this video, and we'll be showcasing all of this information try to help you guys to master the Senate himself. One quick tip as well for you guys whenever playing Palpatine, because I see this a lot in Heroes vs Villains and also in Galactic Assault, is that you actually can use both triggers to play with Palpatine in order to shoot his lightning. I see a lot of players in Heroes vs Villains, and I know they're new players strictly for the fact that they only use one hand with Palpatine. And I don't think a lot of people actually know this, considering the game has been out for quite a while. Veteran players, I'm pretty sure they already know this, but new players especially, you can use both triggers, guys. All you have to do is hold down both triggers in order to get unlimited power with Emperor Palpatine. It's really funny sometimes. You immediately know that a player is new because they just use one hand Palpatine when they shoot his lightning. But guys, you can use both triggers to shoot your lightning with Palpatine. Do it! So jumping into Palpatine star cards, you guys can see the 3 star cards that I use. I'm going to be explaining in a different clip as well why I use these 3 specific star cards compared to the other ones that he have. As in my personal opinion, I think Palpatine is like a glass cannon character. He does really high damage, but he doesn't really take damage too well. So most of the times when you're playing Palpatine, you want to get in, you want to do as much damage to your opponents as fast as you can so you can kill them, and then you can get out really quickly, regain some health, and go back into the fight again. So I'm just going to try to explain like the benefits of these star cards as well, like in another clip coming up right now. So the first star card is called Show No Mercy. The reason why I use this star card is because he actually amplifies Palpatine's chain lightning ability. In my opinion, the chain lightning ability for Palpatine is probably the best ability in his kit. So the benefits of this star card is it actually decreases Palpatine's cooldown of his chain lightning ability by 5 seconds up to the maximum. So for every enemy hit by chain lightning ability, it is going to decrease the cooldown by 0.25 seconds first, and then the more enemies that you hit with it, it is going to hit 5 seconds as a maximum. Palpatine, like I mentioned, very good character. He does really good damage, and like I mentioned earlier in the video, he's kind of like a glass cannon. He does high damage but doesn't really take too much damage too well. So this ability, and plus this star card, it really amplifies like his chain lightning ability, as I personally think this is one of his best abilities out of the entire 3 that he has. You can actually get into a room full of like clones as an example, like let's just say you're playing Galactic Assault, and a good tip for you guys as well, when you are using this ability, the chain lightning ability, it is really good to use it when you are actually using both triggers. So what I'd always recommend is don't start off with the chain lightning ability. Go into a room, shoot some enemies first, use your 2 triggers so that you can actually get unlimited power with the Senate, and then use your chain lightning ability. With this, it is going to actually amplify the damage of your chain lightning ability, and because chain lightning actually ricochets to other targets nearby, you're probably maybe going to hit maybe 4, maybe 5 targets, which is really good in actually wiping out rooms really quickly. So just a little tip for you guys. Second star card that I use is called Surge of Lightning, and the reason why I use this star card is because it actually amplifies Palpatine's chain lightning ability to ricochet or bounce up to a maximum of 4 targets. So like I was talking about earlier, when you use Palpatine's chain lightning ability, it actually helps you to hit more targets. So let's just say, as an example, let's just say you're playing Galactic Assault or you're playing Supremacy, and let's just say there's a bunch of clones in a room and you're just trying to get rid of them really quickly. You can just go in, and like I always mention as well, just a little tip for you guys as well, before you use the chain lightning ability, do make sure that you actually use both triggers, guys. So what you want to do, let's just say as an example, let's just say there's 5 enemies in a room. Let's just say you shoot one of them, use both triggers, and then use a chain lightning ability, and it's actually going to amplify your damage so that you can have a higher damage output, so that you can actually kill those 5 enemies. Palpatine, like I mentioned, as a glass cannon, he does really good damage. His damage is really good. And one thing about Palpatine as well, like he drains enemies' stamina really quickly. So let's just say you're going up against a saber wielder, you could just shoot your chain lightning ability, and it's literally going to like damage them to a point where, you know, it's going to ricochet off of other enemies, and then it also reduces their HP as well. So Palpatine is really good at like crowd control. So just a little tip for you guys. Final star card that I use is called Lightning Reach, and the reason why I use the star card is because he actually gives Palpatine's lightning attack a 30% increase in its range. I find this star card to be really helpful, as let's just say as an example, most times when an enemy might be running away from you, you're actually able to kill them really easily, because let's just say you're going up against a saber wielder and their HP is really low and they're trying to run away from you and stuff. It's actually really good to have like increased range to Palpatine's lightning attacks, as you're actually able to kill them at a much greater distance. I find this star card to be really good, as sometimes in most scenarios, especially for my playstyle of how I play Palpatine like very aggressively and everything, I can actually keep a fair distance away from my opponent and still be able to do damage to them. And in this game, keeping a good distance away from your opponent is always a good idea. And Palpatine, he's very safe to play with this star card as well, in my opinion. So just a little tips for you guys as well, like whenever playing as Palpatine, as you guys have seen me play right now in Galactic Assault and everything. With Palpatine's middle ability, it actually does do damage to your opponents. Before, it actually used to slow down your enemies, however that has been changed, so now it just does damage to your targets. And I find this ability to be really good, but at the same time situationally useful. What I see a lot of new players do, especially in this game, is that they would actually use this middle ability like before they actually start off a fight, and all it does is like puts in the animation and actually allows you to receive damage, and you wouldn't really want to do that, especially considering that Palpatine doesn't necessarily take damage very well. I find the best use of this middle ability is, let's just say you're going up against a group of enemies and everything, I'd always highly recommend using this middle ability when you are actually dealing with a bunch of enemies, or maybe you're dealing with just maybe one enemy and they just have low HP. Let's just say a saber wielder as an example. Let's just say you're going up against Luke and Luke's HP is really low. He's just blocking your lightning attack and you just can't break his stamina in that scenario. Well, if you use his middle ability, like I mentioned, it is going to damage him. And especially for me, with my playstyle of how I play Palpatine, I know that I can actually get in and I can actually keep a close distance with Luke and actually make sure that I can actually do damage to him, and also spin around, maybe like dash to the left, dash to the right, or even dash forward, actually creating some distance between myself, but still allowing myself to do damage to him. So his mid ability, like I said, always use it whenever you think that you're going to be going up against a group of enemies, and you always want to make sure that you're within range of your enemies so that they can be targeted and can be damaged from this ability. Like I mentioned, if you do use this middle ability, you're just going to be stuck in that animation, and all that's going to happen to you is that you're going to be open to receiving damage from your opponents, and like I mentioned, you don't really want that. Another thing as well, especially like how I see a lot of new players doing this, they always stay on the ground with Palpatine. You can stay on the ground, don't get me wrong, but at the same time Palpatine is kind of better while you're actually floating with him. So that's just another tip for you guys as well. You can jump up with Palpatine and still use his lightning attack. You can still use his lightning while in midair. And one thing with Palpatine as well, you can use his chain lightning while in midair as well, and this is actually really good, because let's just say you're going up against a group of enemies as I am right now. If you're staying stationary and you're staying grounded, it's going to be much easier for your opponent to actually damage you. However, when you're actually jumping in the sky and everything with Palpatine, you're going to give your opponents a harder time of actually damaging you. So most times when you're playing Palpatine, I'd highly recommend jumping. Even if you're going up against saber wielders, keep your distance if you need to. Always keep an eye out for their abilities as well. Let's just say you're going up against a Anakin player and they use their pull ability. If you have realized that they have used that ability, you should actually have an idea, okay, Anakin just used his pull ability, therefore I am safe of not being pulled for a period of time until his ability comes back. So most times, like I mentioned, just jump with Palpatine. You can use his chain lightning ability while in midair, and you can use his lightning attack in midair as well. And like I always mention as well, whenever you're playing Palpatine, he doesn't take damage very well, so you always want to give your opponents a harder time to actually damage you. It's really good, so that's just another tip for you guys as well. And touching briefly on Palpatine's right ability, which is called Electrocute, what this ability does, Palpatine sends out a wave of lightning and it actually immobilizes your opponents or stuns them, as another name for it. So like I said, this ability, in my personal opinion, I think is very situationally useful, as you can run a star card which actually increases the range of his Electrocute ability if you'd wanted to go that route, and that's perfectly fine. At the same time, I kind of use this ability as a way to actually keep my opponents grounded. And in most scenarios, if you're going up against a saber wielder, they're going to be blocking, and if you use this ability, you're just going to be doing the animation and you're just going to be leaving yourself wide open to receive damage from your opponents, and obviously you wouldn't exactly want that. So most times whenever I try to use like his Electrocute ability, I would actually try to make sure that my opponent isn't blocking, or if I dash behind them or to the side of them to a point where I see an opening, then I use his Electrocute ability so that I can stun them. In most scenarios, whenever I'm playing like Galactic Assault and everything, I don't necessarily use his Electrocute ability just because of the range of it. Because I'm not running that specific star card that has an increase in range, if I miss my opponent, or if they roll as an example, then I'm just going to be left in the animation and I'm just going to be receiving damage, and that's just something that you just wouldn't want to happen to yourself. So in most scenarios, like I mentioned, if I see an opponent rushing towards me, then I'll use his Electrocute ability, and I highly recommend doing so as well, as you will stun them or immobilize them, and this will actually give you a small opening of a chance to actually do damage to them as well. I hope that this hero guide has actually helped a lot of you players to actually master Palpatine a bit better, or the Senate as we shall call him for the rest of this video. One thing, like I mentioned with Palpatine, he's a very fun character to play, and in the right hands Palpatine is very strong, and at the same time he is very annoying as well. If a Palpatine player is really good with him, it's going to be extremely hard to kill them, because Palpatine is so quick and so agile. He can just dash in and dash out really quickly and do really high damage as well. So do keep that in mind as well when you're facing other Palpatine players. But guys, if you have enjoyed this Palpatine video, do leave a like on it, guys. If you're new to the channel, do hit that subscribe button as well, guys. Thank you for watching, guys. Take care, and hope to see many of you Senates on the battlefield.
The attempt on my life has left me scarred and deformed, but I saw you.
The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.